Okay. 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 Now. No. 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 We share. And okay, here we go. Invisible Differences by Mademoiselle Caroline and Julie Deschez.
I got the black board in the middle.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, I liked it. Obviously a very clean cartooning style. Very simple, very direct. I think it worked. Really good work. I mean, first of all, the use of color I thought was very notable, very obvious, certainly. For the first, approximately 60% of the book, it's almost entirely in black and white, except for the red splotches here and there, mostly on her shoes. But as the story goes on and she gets diagnosed and her world starts opening up and the color starts coming in, but the very nice technique, and there's some splotches of yellows and other things, and all of the way she depicts the way the character. This is obviously a fictional character, Marguerite, I think. Yeah, Marguerite, who's not actually Julie, but is a stand-in for Julie Deschez. So as the way they depict her experiences, I thought was very interesting. A very graphic way of depicting this, of how the noise affects her, and how the commotion is getting to her. And yeah, I thought it was really very effective. Really quite effective. You got all the sound effects, obviously, the footsteps, but they're all very literal, kind of like a Will Eisner type of effect. Very footsteps, and talking and noise, and I think very humorous, obviously, but very effective. I thought this was a very good representation of what the experience is like for people like this. And honestly, I think how many of us in this room, how many of us could say we relate to this sort of thing? I certainly can. In a lot of ways, I relate to a lot of her experience. I honestly do. Just noise, like something happening outside, like airplanes or whatever, construction work or whatever, children playing in the street, whatever, and it just gets on you. Sometimes you can adopt a Zen attitude of just droning it out and zoning it out. But I certainly can relate to a lot of this. Somebody's playing loud music next door, or television going, and yeah, that just quiet, trying to read, So, but you just kind of get into her head here. It's just a very visceral way of getting there. This is the sequence I put on the picture on Meetup. The bip bips of the calculator and the tick-tock ticks of the clock. And yeah, it's just overwhelming. You get the sense, and look at the background color. And it's very light and washed out. And as it gets heavier and heavier and more oppressive, it goes all the way into this deeper, darker red. Very nice. Very effective technique. I don't know. I've never heard of any of either the author or the artist before, but really very nice, good, competent cartooning. I felt, yeah. So anyway, I learned a lot about this stuff I didn't know. I was certainly very surprised to learn about what the situation is in France. I wouldn't have guessed that France is so backwards. That was a surprise to me. I wouldn't have guessed that it's so backwards in its thinking of how these afflictions and these diagnoses need to be treated and taken care of. And I was very surprised to learn this. I did not know this was the situation in France in the modern day 21st century. Yeah, that surprised me. So I learned a little bit from this. Yeah, and it talks a lot about the stigma that it gets on people for this, and just lack of understanding, of what it's about and how it works. And that's just, yeah, that's just ignorance. But so this is a very good comic that I would recommend to people, for people, just for basic education purposes, and just to understand what it's like to live like this, and why we should be more understanding and more sympathetic. So yeah, I will give this yeah, maybe 7.5 out of 10. I thought this was really very good. I really enjoyed this, and I recommend it. I recommend it just for, if people don't know about it, it's a good introduction. And there's, of course, a bibliography at the back that you can peruse, where she gives some good resources and good websites for people to learn more. Yeah, I mean, Asperger's is not the same as autism. It's not the same as, I'm not even sure what the words are anymore. We used to call it retardation, but I guess that's not.
Asperger's is autism. It's on the spectrum, but the high end.
Spectrum. Yeah, spectrum.
Spectrum. They don't use the word Asperger's very much anymore.
Yeah. Okay. And now
Asperger's has been denounced as a Nazi and cancelled.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, just in recent years. So the name has been taken out now. It's no longer considered okay.
And from the symptoms that they talk about, to me, there's a strong overlap of autism, high functioning autism, and ADHD. I've just put an article on my chat line about undiagnosed ADHD in women being invisible there, and women are more successful, seem to be more successful in social masking. That's why it's not picked up as easily as with men, because the women are pretty adept at social masking. Which we all do, but for them it's particularly stressful and difficult, and they need it badly to fit in.
Can I just jump in and make a comment there? And hi guys, I'm in the other room to die over there. And look, David, you made a comment, and I'd just like to come back on that. You said that you felt that France was somewhat behind. Was that actually what you said there, David?
Well, I'm going by what Julie Deschez is depicting in her experience here in this book, and it certainly was surprising to me, her experiences.
Is it possible? I mean, one indicator that I was particularly interested in, that the rates of ADHD, diagnosed ADHD in France is about 1/2 what it is in the United States. I raised the defense of France to say that maybe they're more tolerant. Maybe they're more tolerant of people. And I think Michel Foucault, he was the philosopher behind much of the Paris riots, was a guy, perhaps I shouldn't make that association, but anyway, I've said it, was making a point that, once we are far more tolerant of aberrant or off the norm behavior, and our attitude, particularly in some countries, is to institutionalize anybody that's not quite on the norm. And maybe the French are, contrary to what you said, are perhaps more tolerant, more accepting.
I think what you're saying is true.
To the norm. Yeah.
I think in the modern era, where we're just very intolerant of the non-conformist.
Yeah, so you agree
with David was bringing up about that 80s cartoon, wasn't it?
So Stephen, you're agreeing with me then?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. You look through all the great cartoonists. A lot of them make this point that back in the old days, people were just wildly eccentric compared to what they are now. And we've gone through a conformist process. So somehow all the media and all that is working to make us believe that we have to be a certain sort of person.
Yeah, well, Michel Foucault makes that point very strongly. He said, once upon a time, the so-called mentally ill were actually respected and were members of society. And then, around the age of enlightenment, we began to institutionalize these people as being aberrant. They were no longer as respected. And that's why I'm a little bit reactive to what David asserted. I think that maybe that's just an attitude of a greater accommodation, greater acceptance that the French has. Anyway, I think it's a...
Well, an element was probably Christian society was once strong, and the attitude was to be charitable to those who had problems. Today, we're much more egotistical. That was Nietzsche's point. Even though he didn't agree with Christianity, he saw it as an oncoming social disaster when it was being abandoned. What was going to replace it?
Yeah, I just see an endemic attitude to normalize people. And, I heard Di talk about the being on the spectrum. Well, hey, aren't we all on the spectrum? And isn't that just part of the whole, how can I say it, the vitality of humanity? And we have all the different characteristics and attributes, and to be okay with that, not to try and equalize, not to try and normalize, not to try and, like that DSM-5, how it's trying to bring everybody to a standard norm. And if you're too aberrant, we'll give you some medications to make you normal.
Well,
and,
it's not
rather than changing the environment.
An element of the 1980s culture was chasing the bus of perfection, the belief that you can become 100% perfect.
Yeah. So I would suggest perhaps, au contraire, that the French are perhaps more advanced, not behind, as a suggestion. It's a question, all right? That's just but one that I feel increasingly inclined towards, that we try to, rather than changing the environment of the individual, we change the person to match the environment.
Okay.
Come on, David, come back.
Okay, so allow me to read from the book itself. Autism is genetic and neurobiological in origin. Parents have no control over its causes. In many countries other than France, autistic children enjoy early diagnoses and special care using time-tested methods. France still has a long way to go on this front. Many practitioners with psychoanalytic leanings stubbornly persist on remaining in the Stone Age. This despite the fact that in a 2012 report, the High Health Authority disavowed psychoanalysis as an effective treatment for autism, categorizing it as a non-consensual generalized treatment. In France, only 20% of autistic children attend school, compared with 80% in other developed countries. France is 40 years behind when it comes to autism and has already been twice censured by the European Council in 2004 and 2014 for discrimination with regard to autistic children, failure to provide education, and vocational training. So that's from the text of the book, Rem. So you can argue with her.
Yeah, I had to come back and defend. I can't. I have a strong growing, and it's been growing on me over the last few years, that we have an inclination we want to normalize, and what that person is saying it from their perspective, and we're being rather intolerant of diversity. And we they talk about a number of autistic children. Well, maybe it's a question of diagnosis, and who's to say what an autistic person is compared to a non-autistic? That's
okay. It's not diversity. It's a question here. In the old days, especially British culture, tolerated eccentricity.
Yeah,
they accepted some people were different. You know, like WC Fields or somebody like that. Oh, well, they are just being them.